Everyone, welcome. Good to have you here. Happy Monday to you. Today, I'm really excited for a conversation with Amit over at Cliquify. We're going to talk about recruiting today. We're talking about some of the problems with how we've done recruiting in the past online and some of the issues there, and talk about some of the work they're doing. And it's actually fun. I told him, and we'll dig into this a little bit in the discussion. Most of the companies we've talked to so far on HR Tech Talks have been larger companies, more established firms. They are more of a startup. So it'll be fun to look at that angle of it and why in the world someone would start a startup in 2020, which seems to be the year, goodness, that most of us would prefer to forget. So as we're going to bring Amit on in just a minute, just please chime in. Let me know where you're checking in from. Happy Columbus Day to you. Glad to have you and looking forward to a good conversation. So with that said, I'll bring him up and we'll go ahead and dive in. Hey, welcome.
Hey, Ben, how are you?
I'm great, sir. I'm great. It's been a good day so far. I'm hoping that trend continues. How are you?
Good. Busy, but good.
Awesome. It's a good place to be sometimes. Sometimes I think there's a threshold of that, but it's a good place to be, I think. So just to give the audience a little bit of insight into who they're going to be hearing from for the next little bit, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. Ben, and thank you, by the way, for the time. So I've been an HR guy over the last 15 years in multinational, multi-billion-dollar organizations. I saw a basic gap in the market that I'm looking to address, and we'll get into why now, as you mentioned. But really, I've jumped into the startup world, specifically in the recruiting tech space. I know it's a crowded market, but what we're really after is a point solution that I know is a pain point really for a lot of recruiters and talent leaders out there.
Awesome. That'll be a good discussion. I'm looking forward to it. Again, you and I have chatted back and forth this year, and I actually had a chance to meet you at the last real event, physical event that I went to all year long. I had a chance to meet in person, so I think we've bonded in the crucible of what this year had to bring. So,
Absolutely.
Goodness gracious, talk about. I was kidding about it, sort of half kidding, half serious, because I think the audience wants to hear, and someone actually said it'd be great to hear from a startup. So talk to us about why you would start something up this year of all years and what that process has been like.
Yeah, Ben. So, as they say, every problem is an opportunity, right? And really, where we are, as we saw with so much unemployment right now, given where we are in different sectors, right? We thought there would be a great opportunity for us to, frankly, simplify and provide more access to opportunities by how jobs are advertised out there on LinkedIn, on various social media channels, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, talk more about that. Don't be shy. Tell us what
Yeah,
the
yeah.
process has been like. So
The
you
problem
went in
is,
both feet. It wasn't like there was I've got an idea and I'm going to tiptoe in and then I'm going to slowly
right.
transition. From my perspective, it seemed like you dove straight into it. Maybe you did do that kind of. I'm getting into the water like I do. When it's really cold, I'm going to slowly ease in and acclimate. It seems like you
Yeah,
just dove in, and
yeah.
maybe this
Well,
year is better. I don't know.
no, absolutely. So I dove in because I know this was a problem. I faced it over the last, 15 years in the industry, right? Is something as simple as job descriptions, right? And how do job descriptions really address attracting relevant and more diverse candidates, right? And that was the basic problem that we see, right? We all see this. We all spend so much time building job descriptions, making them all pretty to attract folks. But what I found was when job descriptions are more engaging, they attract more relevant and more diverse candidates. And there's a cost element to this as well. 75% of jobs today, they don't really get advertised as well as they should be. And so there's this thing called a hidden job market that we all know in HR, right? Is the referral system, right? So that does drive, unfortunately, some equality issues, right? And so what we wanted to do is leverage a tool like Cliquify, or leverage Cliquify really, to start to drive more equality in the job search process for candidates, and of course enabled by technology for recruiters. And ultimately, we want to help provide better access to opportunities.
So let's go ahead and let's talk about this because I have some questions I want to ask you around kind of the concepts behind it, the theory around it, and everything else. But if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of put that image you sent me kind of on screen so people can see that, and we'll talk through just how it works, and then we can get into some of the ideas behind why this matters and what it is, things like that. You okay with that?
Sure, absolutely. I am sharing my screen. Can you see it?
There you go.
Awesome, awesome. So we all know, right? You go to any job ad today, right? That what it looks like is what you see on the left, right? And there's so many requirements. In many cases, my experience has shown that there are a lot of unnecessary requirements. And what you see on the left-hand side is a long text-heavy job description that actually deters women and minorities from applying. So there's been studies that have been done. The most recent one was published by Harvard Business Review. Is if if the job description has too many requirements, chances are you'll have males who apply more than females would. Males apply when they meet about 60% of the requirements. Females apply when they meet only 100% of the requirements, right? So, and when I say only, I'm being facetious about it. But really, it's how do you start to simplify the actual job, break it down into what are the top things that you absolutely need in the job, to then allow and really send a message out there that, hey, you don't need to have all the skills that are required to apply, right? So just by the sheer nature of simplifying the job spec to what you see on the right, and it is aided by artificial intelligence and NLP to use the right language and the text contextualizing the job with visuals. We're seeing a tremendous amount of engagement, just relevant candidates overall, about 6 to 8x is what we're seeing, early indicators are. And with females, we're seeing roughly 2 to 3x more applicants than you would see by posting a job that's on the left-hand side.
That's incredible. And I'm glad you mentioned the research, because that's one of the things that I've seen. Drop that off so we can come back. So that's one of the things that I've had some conversations about this year is we we stick with these things because we've used them for a long time. One of the things that you and I have talked about before is like this is actually a legal document that the company has to abide by, right? This isn't just a thing that we put together for fun. There are some other requirements for putting a job description together, and we know the purpose of those. But then we just take that job description, which is written as basically a technical document for ensuring compliance, and we stick that out there on the internet and hope that the audience out there is prepared to translate all of that HR speak into the actual things that fit their skills and their abilities, their interest to actually do the job. And that's a silly assumption. I don't know why we think that, but that's just how we have done it typically in the past. And I'm so thankful to think that maybe we're going to get past that finally. Maybe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And spot on, right? So we actually have research that shows that candidates have about 6 to 8 seconds to read. I mean, that's an attention span of an average candidate today, 6 to 8 seconds, right? There is no way they're reading all the requirements and that are on the left-hand side in 6 seconds, right? So what does that result in? You get a lot of noise in the system when you get irrelevant candidates applying, right? So our goal is to drive more relevancy and who's actually more fit for the job, as well as drive less noise for the recruiter at the back end when they're actually getting the applicants, right? The other key research piece that we've seen is about 81% of candidates don't even read the full job description before they're applying. So that again yields a lot of noise in the system. And it's an old adage saying garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you had a lot of noise in the system, you could have the best AI tool that's parsing through candidate resumes and so on. You could have all of that, but ultimately you're still driving a lot of noise for the recruiter who's already overwhelmed, right? With rec loads of 1 to 40 to 60, depending on the industry that you're in. And what we want to be able to do is actually drive better flow to the recruiter, as well as make sure that their time is really well invested.
It feels like I like the piece you talked about really tailoring that, because we actually have done some research in the last couple of years around the hiring experience, how candidates perceive it, things like that. And what we hear from candidates in our research is like, we just want to be able to show what we can do. We want to make sure that we're a good fit for this. And when you said a minute ago, they read on average 80% of it before they apply. Like, well, what's in the bottom 20%? That's always where we actually put the actual requirements for the job. The top of it's usually the generic blurbs about what the job is like and what you'll be doing and things like that. When we get the actual requirements for the job, maybe they're skipping over that part and just going into the funnel. I'll just apply for this and see what happens. And then again, it's not just a no for the candidate, which creates, who knows, it's hard to measure how much friction that creates and how much pain that creates in the process for all the people who are telling no, but you're telling someone else no. On top of that, that adds a layer of stress to the recruiter to try to figure out how to review all those candidates when they physically, again, are already kind of bursting at the seams. It's hard to it's harder to get the work done they have to do, much less let's just make it easier for people to apply, dive in, add twice as many candidates, and then say, again, good luck actually screening through those and looking for the right ones to fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know so the audience out there, as an HR leader, right, for years, for 15 plus years, there's always this question around, hey, what do I, is this going to change the way my job descriptions look on my career site, as an example? So we're not after that. We're simply after providing a wrapper to these job descriptions that are detailed. What we want to be able to do is actually be socially friendly with these cards, purely for attraction purposes, right? Once the users actually click on these cards that would appear on all kinds of social media channels, that's what our platform does. It kind of mass publishes this on various social media channels at a fraction of the cost. In fact, we're running a free trial for 30 days at the moment, just so people can actually see how this thing works. What we want to be able to do is just drive the right traffic to that job on your applicant tracking system, right? And that's simply what we're trying to do is evolve the job description, the text-heavy content, into very consumable, bite-sized media, right? That is relevant. In addition to the static images that you see here, we're also adding video in about a month's time, right? So in addition to the requirements of the job, you could literally plug in a video here where you see that static image as well. And as you know, right, there's a saying, picture says 1,000 words. I'm seeing some early clients of ours, they're starting to use these images to drive subtle diversity messages as well. I mean, you see this example here, there's an African-American female here, right? And, for an AWS cloud architect role, that's a heavy, frankly, male-driven type of a role, right? So you're starting to now send subtle signals out there to the market that, hey, we are open and we really think about equity and diversity.
So actually, we got a question in just a second ago, and I'm going to pop it to you if you don't mind, because again, you've been in the space, you've been a recruiter, you've interacted with hiring managers for a long time, and Erica said, I actually think that HR posts the job description as it is because some hiring manager had a hand in that probably, and they don't want to make them upset if they don't bring in the right candidate, right? If I make a modification or if I change that or I try to make it more candidate friendly, and we end up attracting the wrong kinds of people, they don't want to upset that sort of apple cart. So talk about that relationship with the hiring manager, and maybe is this an opportunity to test something, to experiment, to pilot a little bit, and see if this actually can lead to better outcomes.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, right? And of course, I spent a lot of time in recruiting, working with hiring leaders, right, hiring managers on what are the top things, right? And what we're seeing with actually one company in particular is their recruiters are now actually having that dialogue with their hiring leader on what are the top things you absolutely can't live without, right? So think of this job card as like a Twitter feed as well, where there's character limits, because it's really starting to force that dialogue between, I need 15 things in the job, that are nice to haves versus the 3 to 6 that I absolutely can't live without. And that just dialogue in itself is yielding, frankly, a better experience across all parties, the hiring managers, the recruiters, as well as the candidates. Does that help? I hope I answered.
It does. I have myself muted there for a second. I was trying to get back over to my notes, and I'm watching the comments and everything. People keep sharing, keep asking. One of the things that I wanted to talk about too, and this again, this is our chance to make fun of job descriptions. If you're listening in, you want to make fun of some job descriptions, go ahead and post in those things that you've seen every single one of them have, right? Like we needed a team player that can multitask and is dedicated. And we have those things in the job ad we post typically that makes it sound like every single other job ad out there. And so if someone's reading, they've got to skip down some amount of text before they actually find out what the job is really about beyond the job title. Right. And one of the things that I like about this approach that you guys have taken is we're going to get the key things and put those right up front so that you can see those and then go beyond. It's not a list of 27 requirements, right? I know hiring managers are known to do that, but it's a list of 2 or 3 things, key points that you have to have. And if you don't have them, again, this is not the job for you. You can move right along. But if you fit those things, let's have a conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll give you another example. Just happened last week, actually, right? There was this detailed job description. Gosh, it must have gone on for like 2 pages, right? And there was this one key aspect of the job, which was visa sponsorships, right? And, not a lot of companies provide that these days, just given the environment. But that's a key aspect of that job and to open up the candidate pool, right? it was buried somewhere in the text in the job description, and we actually highlighted that in the card. And all of a sudden, that recruiter just that day got like hundreds of applicants, right? So that's just one example of how you kind of rise above the noise that gets lost in the descriptions to just really start to highlight what's absolutely required in the job, as well as to open up the applicant pools that may not even see. And really our vision or our goal is to make unseen jobs seen, right? That's our tagline. So we want to make sure that people actually see what's truly required of the job to drive more relevant at the top of the recruiting funnel.
So I'm going to put my devil's advocate hat on for a second and push back on you a little bit, and
Sure.
you can push back all you'd like. All right, again, we're friends. You can hit me back. So I can imagine a large organization, right? You have some experience in really large enterprise organizations. I'd imagine they probably have someone in their team that can do graphics, can do social recruiting stuff, recruit marketing, those kinds of things. But a smaller team is less likely to have someone to do that. Like, how do you balance that piece with the tool that you provided? Is this for large companies? Is this for SMBs? Like, who's the best fit?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we talk about that all the time around, who do we want to target? And what we are targeting and what we're seeing success with is actually companies of all sizes, because even the folks who have employment branding, groups or persons, right? They're using this to just simplify the job spec in a visual way, right? You've got smaller companies who don't have a branding person, as an example. So this is really putting, we're basically arming or equipping the recruiters to really start to think like brand influencers, just purely by simplifying the job spec. So to answer your question, what we're seeing early on here is companies large and small. I mean, I've got a client I'm talking to right now, 27 billion in revenue around the world, right? Looking at this. I've got a small company with, frankly, 300,000 in revenue, right, a year, right? So it's really meant to provide a very simple point solution to anybody who's out there trying to make their jobs more attractive for relevant and diverse candidates.
You mentioned the diverse thing again, and actually Erica had a question earlier I want to come back to, and she was, I'm going to push it up there on screen so give her the credit for it. Thank you, Erica, by the way, for chiming in. So let's talk about that. You talked about this earlier, Amit, right? The hidden job market. We don't post these jobs. We don't share them out formally, push them out to different areas where we can reach a more diverse group of people. And that while we might fill the job, we aren't doing it in an equitable way. So can you talk a little about how those two things are related and how we can get past that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my experience, as well as, doing research in this role, what I'm finding is there are two kind of main barriers, if you will, to advertisements, right? So the first one is the cost, right? Which is if you do sponsored ads, as an example, we all know, right, that gets pretty costly pretty quickly, right? So you can't afford to do it for all of your jobs, right? Especially if you're a large company. So that's number one. There's a cost element to this. So we're essentially driving down the cost quite significantly. I mean, you're talking on average from $200 to $400 for a sponsored ad versus building this card at $8 a piece that you can reshare as many times as you like, right? So that's number one. So we want to drive essentially more scalable, job advertisement approach in the hands of the recruiters at a very affordable cost. So it doesn't matter if you're a $27 billion company or a $300,000 company, it's very affordable to you. So that's number one. So we're essentially shedding light on these jobs at a mass scale through social media, because we know 80% of candidates actually hang out on social media channels, right? Be it LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and soon maybe, I don't know, we'll see what happens with TikTok, right? So, but really that's number one, right? So just by the sheer nature of us making this more affordable will allow for bigger and a wider audience, if you will, of diverse candidates to actually see these jobs, right? So that's number one. Number two is reducing reliance on informal networks. So if you have informal networks, right, and we actually did a very quick poll on LinkedIn about a month or so ago, 67% of recruiters said, their main source of hiring is referrals. Referrals are great. I used to love them. I still do. I just feel like there's a balance between referrals and driving more equity in the hiring process, right? So what we want to be able to do is, I'm not saying referrals will go away. You just got to have some balance around making sure that you are going out there and making sure that your candidate pool is frankly diverse in the sense of it's attracting all kinds of walks of life, and not just relying on referrals.
Absolutely. Well, there's one of the things I can't remember if I mentioned on the show before here, or if it was on a podcast or somewhere else, I can't remember, but I told a story about back when I was recruiting. One of the things that we did was we would do specific diversity referral pushes. And so it was, hey, tell me about the best diverse individual you ever worked with.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not just for an engineer, not just for a whatever, but tell me the best person that you worked with. And then I'd get get their names, get those resumes eventually, and find a way to keep them on our radar for a future opportunity in those areas. Mm-hmm. And that helped us to start building that pipeline of people who could fit that role. So anyway, that was one of the ways we did. We tackled that, trying to blend the two together.
Yeah, that's a great way, right? And all we're trying to do is kind of scale it and bring it to masses by simplifying, right, and visualizing these jobs, right?
Oh yeah, I did everything the hard way back then.
No, I mean, look, that's a great way.
The tools that I had were these right here. That was it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of recruiters out there, great recruiters out there who I know they do well, right, in terms of making sure that they have a diverse candidate slate and all of that. All we wanted to do was, this was a pain point that I experienced, I'm sure others experience out there, and just wanted to be able to scale it across the enterprise, right?
Absolutely. So Tyre actually had a question about the primary tool most companies use to manage the recruiting function, right? ATS. How are you going to work with that side of the technology relationship, I guess, so that employers can either get the right information in there, or how's this going to play with that market, basically? So what she wants to know.
Yeah. So very simply, we do have in our roadmap to start integrating with the major ATSs. While we're working on the integration, it's a very simple pull strategy right now, where these cards are actually linked to the actual job, that detailed job description that's already in the ATS. So it's as simple as just directing the right traffic to your URL of the job, right? So for now, because we don't have an integration at the moment, but we're working with like the major providers to get this integrated. For now, it's as simple as, hey, I have this job open, here's the URL. And we are, however, collecting all the stats in an aggregated way across the social media channels. And again, through our software, we're able to actually tell you, hey, this particular card with this language actually worked better for this demographic. So that's the value that we provide in terms of analytics at the back end of this.
Really interesting, having that deeper insight, because right now I feel like most of us, again, I'm generalizing things a little bit, thinking about my time in the seat and the recruiters that I talk to, but we post a job, we fill the job, we wipe the sweat off our brow, and we move on to the next one. We don't ever stop to think about the things like you're talking about there, where we have a couple of different ways we're presenting this, and if we present it this way, look, we're actually driving 40% more female candidates in this pipeline. Whereas if we present the other way, we're not seeing that sort of increase there, or it's leaning towards the male side. So you're getting some different kinds of insights. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we're starting to actually see is key skills as well, right? Because now we are able to crystallize what are the key skills that are required of the job. And there's an analytics engine at the back end. And so basically for talent leaders out there and CHROs, we can literally tell you within minutes, here are the top 5 skills that your recruiters are working on around the world, right? Because we also have geography information.
I'm going to put that out of mine, because I'm going to go in a whole different direction now. Anybody who's listened to me for 5 minutes knows I'm a little data nerd. So I'm thinking about all the questions you could ask and potentially answer by doing that, right? By looking at those insights and thinking about that, not just at a job level, which is what we often do, or even at a regional level, but at a global level, and looking at what skills right now are limiting our effectiveness as a business. If you see that kind of cut across the entire spectrum and say, hey, right now, this thing right here, this is a skills gap we have as a company. Why? Because we can tell that's the number one thing we're trying to hire for across a range of positions, whether they're related in a job family or just across the board. Again, really interesting things you can dig into there. So if someone is listening to this, they're curious about Cliquify, they want to know more about how the company's working, what you're doing, pricing, all the other fun stuff, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn as a co-founder and CEO of Cliquify. You could certainly just direct message me. But of course, we also have our website, cliquify.me. There's a very simple link there if anybody's interested in a demo. Like I mentioned earlier, we are running a free trial. This is a subscription-based model. So there are no contracts or anything like that. Recruiters can come and go as they please. It's kind of like Netflix, if you will, from that perspective in terms of subscription-based model. And it's like I mentioned before, the cost is just after the free trial, we're really biting into how affordable we want to make this. We want to bring recruitment advertisement to the masses, right? So that's our goal, and it comes down to roughly anywhere between $8 to $11 per card.
Yeah. Very inexpensive, again, for the kind of results that you're seeing already, early stages with some of your different customers already. It's already exciting to hear about those kind of impacts. And again, it's one of those things. Recruiter, it's not like it takes 8 weeks for you to go through this big procurement process. Just swipe your card, give it a shot, right? See if it works. And again, bring that data with you when you want to talk to your team about let's sign up for this long term, right? That gives you a chance to do it even during the free trial to show the value that you're getting out of it. I'm the data guy. I lean that way anyway, but why not do that? If you're getting that kind of insight, it's not just another place to store resumes or another place to post jobs out there, another job posting site. It's a way to actually measure and track some of these other kind of pieces of intelligence around not just hiring, not just pulling in the candidates, but around some of the diversity pieces like you talked about earlier. That excites me a lot.
Yeah, and to your point, Ben, right? Build, buy, borrow decisions that talent leaders around the world, they're all constantly thinking through that, right? So now you actually have real data for your organization, right? That's customized by location to be able to share, hey, here are the top things we're working on right now, right? Can we maybe, really think about why aren't we developing these skills internally, right? And I know that's where your head was going, right, Ben? Knowing you, right? So,
I couldn't help it.
but yeah, I mean, look, we know. I mean, the early success of the products have been amazing. I do want to thank the early trailblazers who are taking this for a spin and actually seeing a lot of value out of it. And that's we want we know we're confident that the product will sell itself, and that's why we're offering a free trial, 30 days. We can even go beyond that, right? Whatever you guys feel comfortable with out there. Because again, we're just getting started, and I mean the journey, as you know, is very long, right? I mean, 75% of jobs are not advertised today, and that's a huge market out there that we want to tap into.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time today. I appreciate the audience, Tyra, Erica, Aaron, all of you that were sharing, asking questions, chiming in, everybody that listened in. Thank you to you, but thank you as well for joining me for the conversation today, sir. I've appreciated it. It's been good to see you, good to chat with you again, and I'm really excited about your new venture. Congratulations on that.
Thank you all. Thank you, audience, and thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. All right. The rest of you, thank you for joining us for HR Tech Talks today. We'll catch you next week with a new episode. So appreciative of your time, and enjoy the rest of your Monday.